There we go. And let's see. And I think I'm going to share my screen so that we'll work through the slides for this morning's session. So welcome everyone. Most of you have been with the club before, if not all of you. So hopefully you recognize my voice. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but my name's Amy Lear and I am president of the club. I'm actually now going into my 4th year as president, 5th year on the board, and I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment. It's been quite well, the last 21 months have been quite the roller coaster that we've all gone through. So it's really nice to start this season with some sort of normalcy. So in terms of what we're covering today, just before we get into the agenda, I just want to remind everybody who we are and what our core values are. So I guess 3 swim seasons ago, we created a strategic plan for the team and established our vision, a program of excellence in training, team culture, character development, and family support. And we want each swimmer to have the opportunity to set personal goals and achieve their highest potential. From there, we created our mission, and we really want to inspire a team culture where everyone encourages and takes pride in each other at all levels of competition. All of our swimmers have different strengths, and so we want to celebrate everyone's accomplishments. And our core values, things like celebrating everyone's achievements. We want to provide a safe, fun, and positive environment for development. So that's just forms the basis of who we are as a swim team. In terms of our agenda for today, Richard is going to go through training and expectations. I'll go through just communications and policy. And then Ralph and I, Ralph is our COC, will talk about the volunteer commitment for this year. So as I mentioned before, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you have a question, to put it into the chat function. So Richard, I will pass it on to you to talk about training and expectations.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay, so for those that don't know me, I'm Richard. I'm the interim head coach for the Marlins right now until Megan returns, who she does plan to return in November. At MMST, we have an athlete-centered, coach-driven, parent-supported program. We really try to emphasize a holistic approach to giving the athletes everything that they need to obviously succeed and to be the best possible swimmer they can be. Next slide.
Yep.
Expectation of the swimmers. Communication. Obviously, it's very important for the swimmers to talk to their coaches, right? If they're not feeling well, if they're hurt, right? If they're not emotionally not feeling well, right? There's a ton of things that they need to make sure they're talking to the coaches, letting them know how they feel that day, right? We're always available to talk. Having a world-class attitude at every practice, right? Coming to each session ready to work hard, positive attitudes, right? So that obviously they can perform their best. Adhering to all of MMST's swimmer code of conduct for behavior, MMST COVID-19 standard operating procedures, right? Masks, getting the pre-screen ready before every practice, and sanitizing at all times. Okay, being prepared for each practice, right? Having water bottle, having their equipment, and we're always celebrating the process versus the results, right? Always thinking about the little things that they do each practice that's going to make them a better person, right? Not only for just swimming, but for the future, right? In everything that they do. Okay, next slide. Okay, expectation of parents. Again, communication, right? If you have concerns or if your kid is sick, obviously let the coach know. that you won't be there. Obviously, we're adhere to the respect in sport, our MMST parent guardian code of conduct, right? Obviously, support cheerlead, right? You got to make sure that, right, the kids, it's tough. It's a tough time for all the athletes, right? Going through COVID, going back to school, right? Coming back to train hard, right? Some days they're not going to feel great. Make sure you're there to pick them up when they need it. Okay. And how you react to obviously success and failure can be a big indicator of whether they decide to continue or not. So next slide. Okay, return to swimming update, right? Our return to swimming committee continues to meet. We'll have our next meeting on Monday. And plan to update our COVID-19 standard operating procedures as needed. We're also going to be discussing the vaccine passports. Swim Ontario recently just sent their latest update. And then after the committee meets, we'll have our board meeting on Tuesday to approve the recommendations of the Return to Swim committee. In process of determining impact of the town of Milton's policy that youth under 18 in an organized sport and associated coaches, volunteers and officials with organized sport are exempt. And yes, Swim Ontario's COVID-19 masking and vaccination requirements, which was released yesterday evening. Sorry, I went out of order, but. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Richard, just to interject just for a minute. So those FAQs from Swim Ontario were released late last night. The Return to Swimming Committee, the board, we are in the process of going through to figure out how our club is going to be impacted by these. So there will be a communication about it next week.
Okay, uniforms and equipment, right? MMST cap at all swim meets. We're planning for those, so make sure you get them from the office. You can just send the coaches an email. They'll be able to pick it up and give it to your swimmer, right? The equipment list is on the registration page, so make sure you know which equipment you need for your group. I think most kids have their stuff in senior and senior development. Clothing required, right? All groups require that black MMST t-shirt. For senior development, right? Track jacket, track pants. The first MMST apparel online order deadline is September 27th, and all other clothing items are optional, right? And you can obviously order stuff for your family and friends. Okay, squad movement, right? So at MMST, again, we talked about that athlete-centered approach, right? We believe in long-term athlete development, a holistic approach, from when they're all the way in their pre-competitive to when they become a senior swimmer. Advancement and placement of athletes is at the head coach's sole discretion, right? Coaches' experience, knowledge, and understanding of the sport of swimming will play an integral part in the decision-making process. An achievement of some or all the guideline does not guarantee a position in the squad. And MMST performance pathway are evaluated each spring and updated as necessary.
Richard, before we move on to the next screen, just because I'm sharing my screen, can you just check the chat to see if there's any questions we should answer? I think there's a few there.
Could you repeat the info about the vaccine requirement, please? So we are in the process of evaluating those. We have the information from the town and from Swim Ontario, and we will be meeting on Monday. The Return to Swimming committee will be meeting on Monday to discuss, and the recommendation will be going to the board for Tuesday's meeting, and we will send a communication out regarding the vaccine requirements. However, please note that Onyx is requiring proof of vaccination, and they are a separate entity from us, so they have their own set of rules and guidelines that they need and require. Is that okay?
Any other questions there, Richard?
No, that was the only question.
Okay.
And yeah, next slide.
Yep.
Okay, and so the only relevant one right now.
Oh, sorry.
For senior development, obviously trying to get into senior, right? The performance pathway, challenging training objective sets by coaches similar to those that completed in the senior squad. Example, right? Being able to swim 24 100s on 140 or 1250s kick on a minute, or potentially Central Region qualifying time or above, but it's more so the training into being able to do the training intervals at that level. Okay, next slide. So our integrated support team, right? Obviously, we have Onyx Fit. It's our dryland facility for junior, senior development, and senior. LifeMark Physio, it's our recommended physio for rehab, right? We've sent a lot of athletes for chronic shoulder injuries, stuff like that. They've done a great job helping integrate our swimmers back into the pool in a timely manner. So they're the one we recommend. Obviously, Coach Cheryl Ross is our nutritionist. And if you have any questions regarding nutrition, you can shoot her an email. Also, she will be doing talks later in time. And also Dr. Nicole Forster is our sports psychology consultant. And she will also be doing some meetings later in the year. Okay, so return to racing. The Return to Racing Committee continues to meet. They've drafted a racing plan, waiting for actually Swim Ontario approval. We've actually just received our Town of Milton approval. We intend to use the in-house in October as a learning opportunity for officials. So it'll be an unsanctioned meet. And we're going to sanction the meets in November and December to try to get some official times for our swimmers. We also plan to have a virtual swim league with some other teams in Ontario, the Granite Gators, Lakeshore Aquatic Club, Barrie Trojans, and Dorado Stars. We're going to have some unsanctioned weekly Friday dual meets in the fall. And so once a week, we'll be racing other teams, and there'll be point totals to see which team wins per week, and then there'll be a final meet where all teams will compile their points, and we'll have the championship meet from all the teams. And then here are the dates for the official, the unofficial in-house, where we're going to have our officials try to get a little bit of a refresher, is on the 16th. November and December in-house are the ones we're going to try to sanction. And OJI, that's a qualifying meet. We'll have to see if it even runs, but if we're able to get people qualified via the sanction in November, that'll be great. Okay, we'll have to see about that.
And we'll be continually updating the information on our website as things are confirmed or as we get new information. Mm-hmm. Any questions for Richard before we move on to communication and policies? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you'd like to type it in the chat. Anything in the chat function, Richard?
No, nothing.
Okay. All right, I'll take us through communication and policies. Just a reminder, the structure of our club. So we're run by a volunteer board of directors. So myself, Sharon, Karina, Amy, and Tanya. And then the head coach, who is Richard right now in the interim, Megan when she returns. They oversee our paid competitive program coaches, our swim academy coaches. Our bookkeeper and office administrator reports both into the board and our head coach. And then in terms of the board of directors, we have various committees. So the Return to Swimming Committee has Karina as a board member on that committee, so the liaison between the committee and the board. Return to Racing, Tanya's sitting on that committee. Sponsorship and fundraising, Amy will be the board contact there. And then we also have our club officials chairperson, our COC, Ralph, who will be talking a little later in this session, and our club officials administrator, our COA, who is Kelly Bowen again. So that's just an overview of how the club is structured. In terms of who you should be contacting with questions, this is similar to prior years. So anything to do with training, please start with your swimmer's coach, and we've included each of the group's coach email address here so you can access, or so that you can contact them. So progress, goal setting, hopefully when we're back to participating at swim meets, how to select your events. Then if you need to escalate any concerns, that's when you would contact our head coach. From an administrative side of things, our administrator bookkeeper, Katerina, I just want to remind everyone, she works part-time for the Milton Marlins. So she works Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So there may be a delay in her responding to your emails. We do try and respond to emails within 24 hours, but just keep that in mind. If something is urgent, feel free to send myself and or Richard an email. If you have any concerns about your account, that's when you would escalate to Sharon as our club's treasurer. And then any questions about the volunteer commitment or policies and procedures, then those can be directed to myself. Make sure you spend the time looking for information to answer your questions. The handbook, I know, is very long, but it's detailed like that for a reason, because we do want to try and include all the information we can to answer your questions. So start with the handbook. We've got lots of information on our website in terms of the calendar, resources, parent information. And then also there's the Swim Ontario and Swimming Canada website. If you don't follow us, try and follow us on one social media venue like Instagram as an example, because we do post pretty frequently there. One thing I just want to point out, this has been an issue in prior years where we end up having to chase families who have not fully completed the registration process. And we're going to take a really hard line on this year, because if all 5 steps, and those are all detailed in the handbook, aren't completed within 2 weeks of registering, the Swim Ontario insurance doesn't actually cover your swimmer. So that's not good for your swimmer, it's not good for the club. So please, if you're getting any emails from Katerina about incomplete registrations, please deal with that as soon as you can, so that we really don't want to have to pull swimmers out of the pool. And safe sport continues to be an important concern. So athletes, coaches, officials, and volunteers have the right to participate in a safe and inclusive training and competitive environment that is free of abuse, harassment, or discrimination. It's one of the reasons why we have the Respect in Sport program. We actually started it several years ago before it was mandated by Swim Ontario. There are resources that you can reach out if you do have any concerns, the Safe Sport Officer and the Canadian Sports Helpline, and those resources are available through the Swim Canada website. Any questions on policies, communication, anything like that before we talk about this year's volunteer commitment? Again, feel free, unmute yourself or type a question in the chat function.
Nothing in the chat.
Nope. Okay. Thanks, Ralph. Okay, so this year's volunteer commitment, the number of points required for each group is consistent with where we started last year. And so we've had to change the volunteer commitment based on everything that's happened in the last 2 seasons. So as an example, last year we waived the volunteer commitment because there just weren't the volunteer opportunities. Fingers crossed that we can actually run swim meets this year. So for senior and senior development, it's 5 volunteer points. We have changed the officials clinic requirement this year compared to prior years. Because it's been, well, I think the last swim meet we as a club hosted was February 2020. I know myself and a lot of us probably don't remember how to be a strokes and turns judge or a timekeeper. So the officials clinic requirement this year is to either take one new clinic that you haven't taken before, or we're going to give credit for families taking a refresher. So you can take a clinic that you have previously taken. We just want to get everyone kind of back up to speed, whether it's strokes and turns, timekeeping, so that we remember how to do these things properly. It looks like there's a couple questions in the chat function. Ralph, do you mind reading?
So the first one is, does the respect in sports certificate have to be done yearly?
Yep, that's a great question. So the respect in sport does not have to be done annually. It only needs to be done once. So you just would input the same certificate number that you have in the past.
Amy?
Okay, and then
Oh, sorry, hold on one sec, Karina.
No, it's Karina. I just answered to everyone there.
Okay.
I had done that for my daughter when she was playing volleyball years ago, and it's the same number I use. So
yes, so if you've used
use,
it, if you've used it, or if you've had to complete it for a different sport,
Yes.
it's still the same course, so you can use that certificate. Yep.
And then the second question, Amy, is, are the points required per athlete?
That's all detailed in the handbook, and it's by family. So the points that you're required to complete are based on your highest level swimmer. So for example, if you have somebody in senior and somebody in novice, you would be required to complete 5 points because that's your highest level swimmer.
Okay, and then the next question is, are the officials clinics offered from MST? Anna will get to that on the next slides.
Yep,
Okay?
yeah, we'll give more details about the officials clinics in a couple minutes. Anything else, Ralph? Or
That's it.
okay. So volunteer points requirement, couple ways you can earn those. So by participating on committees and or other team roles, officiating or volunteering at swim meets. And just, I want to point out that the officials clinic requirement is separate from the volunteer points requirement. So we don't award points for going to that clinic, just to keep that in mind. The number of points earned for the different roles, committees, that's all detailed in your handbook on page 15. So you can go and look at that. And a reminder, this is consistent with prior years. Each volunteer point is worth $50 and for any point outstanding at the end of the year. So for example, if your requirement is 5 points, you earn 1 point during the season. That means you would have 4 outstanding points at June 30th, and you would owe $200 to the club. Now, we did change this volunteer commitment process this year. We didn't require you to hand in checks because it was a pain. I appreciate that, and it was a lot of administrative work. So what we've done as part of your registration process, you acknowledged and consented to the fact that you will pay either by check or credit card at the end of the swim season, June 30th, for any points outstanding. I sent out an email earlier this week about committee positions that are available and included a description of each position. Applications are due this Wednesday. So please, if you have any questions about those volunteer opportunities, feel free to send me an email. But again, please get your applications in by the end of Wednesday so that we can get a move on with some of these things. Any questions on that before I pass it over to Ralph?
So we no longer need to submit 2 checks for the volunteers?
Yep, and that's detailed in the handbook. So instead of, let me step back. The reason we changed that requirement in the last 2 seasons because of the COVID pandemic, we've had to either alter or cancel the volunteer commitment. So it was a lot of work for families to submit checks and then we'd end up canceling. So this year instead, as part of the registration process, you acknowledged that the volunteer commitment, and if you don't earn those points, then you'll owe the club at the end of June. So instead of collecting those checks up front, we changed the process this year.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, great. Ralph, I'll pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so official clinics requirements. So that ties basically to the whole development of officials for the club. And why is it necessary? Why does the club need officials? And there's some 3 basic things. One is we just have to basically comply with Swim Ontario regulations that requires us as a club to have a certain number of officials to function. And then another basic point is that we need officials to run the meets. If we want to put on swim meets, we need officials to act as timekeepers, referees, judges of electronics, etc. So, and then there are different levels of officials, and we need to basically comply and have a number of higher level officials to basically fulfill these requirements. The clinics that we put on, they're put on by the club ourselves. All the clinics this year will be virtual. There are some clubs there are other clubs as well that put on clinics, and you're more than welcome to join those as well, if that works better from a timing perspective. And there's many clinics that are put on by Swim Ontario as well. So there will be several options this year. And as I noted, all of them will be online this year. Nothing will be in person. Okay, next clinic. So that answers your question, Anna. There's several options. All right, so then here's sort of a calendar up to the end of the year for this fall. So our first clinic will be September 30th for a basic introduction to swimming and safety marshal. And then you basically can see all the dates for strokes and turns, clerk of course, chief timekeeper, etc. So, and then we'll put on another calendar for the spring clinics to basically see what is the demand out there and what do we need, right? So if you can't make those dates, then there's other options like with other clubs or Swim Ontario. Also, if you want a refresher, you can also join these clinics here. So it's because it's online, there's also not really a limit of how many people we can have, right? And all these clinics will be put on via Zoom, right, Amy? That's basically our platform with the club.
Yes, so we'll use Zoom, and then we'll have to set up, in order to keep track of who's going to the clinics, our COA will set them up so that you can register for the clinic in advance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right.
Yep.
Any questions on those clinics, or is that fairly clear? Nothing in the chat, so I think that makes sense. All right, next slide. Why do we want you to basically train up to become a higher level official? As I said earlier, certain positions can only be filled if you have a higher level of officiating, and that only can be achieved by training, right? So you have to take the clinics, you have to get deck experience, and you have to have sign-offs from positions that you filled at swim meets. So the club needs it, right? And we're encouraging it. So you basically get more points when you fill positions that require a higher level. There's an incentive program that's outlined in the handbook. So there's some monetary and some credit encouragement, right? And but the main thing is, with the last year not having any swim meets and very little experience for officials, we are in dire need for higher level officials. You know, there's a natural people basically move on with kids going off to university, and that happened now twice in the last, but it happens every year, but this year we have no further parents coming up the ladder. So going through the experience of all the different parents, we really need people to participate and train up and become a level 2 and level 3, and hopefully some of them step up to become a level 4 to have more mentoring and referees options out there for the meets. Okay, what do we need to move up the ladder? You need to attend the clinics. You need to get signed deck evaluations when we do the meets. And in order to facilitate it also, you can email me at the email noted below. And we can also set up a bit of a training plan to see and make sure that you actually get to fill the positions that you need, right? The challenge that we often had with having a purely first come, first serve basis is that a lot of people have taken the clinic, but they actually haven't had the chance to fill a starter position or a chief timekeeper position because it was always already taken. So we want to do it a bit more strategic this year so that people fill in the gaps on their certification card, and it makes it a little more easier to actually get to the next level and fill the requirements that are necessary. Next slide. Yep. So one thing that we seem to struggle with, all of us, is keeping our deck experience updated on the Swim Ontario website. I mean, I was not aware that we were supposed to do it until some time ago, and so were many other parents. So in order to basically get us up to speed a little quicker this year, Kelly and I discussed that the best thing is all the parents just email through a copy of their official certification card, and then Kelly will actually put it in. And then going forward, once we basically start with the meets, parents should go online on a more regular basis and log into Swim Ontario and just update their deck experience. Talking to some other higher level officials like Nilesh, he pointed out that's a real pain to do it after 2-3 years, dig through the old information. When did you attend what meet? So if you do it on an ongoing basis, it's a lot easier and quicker. All right, so please email that through to Kelly so that we can get that updated and get you basically up to speed from an experience record perspective. Okay, next slide. So this is just sort of more a flow chart of what happens. So the first thing we need to do is basically every parent that wants to act as an official needs to register with Kelly. Then she will register you with Swim Ontario. You will get an email, which will show a screenshot in the next slide. There is basically a form that you need to sign, the personal information protection and electronic document.
It's a lot of letters, right? Ralph.
Yeah, so I had to look that up before. But yeah, so the process is you will get an email from Swim Ontario, which most of you already received for your swimmer. Then similar to what you do when you register your swimmer, you have to update your own information. And then basically it goes back to Katarina, our registrar, and she will pay the invoice, and then you're fully registered as an official. The reason why it's important to be registered is there is some sort of deadlines that we have to meet, and every official needs to be registered at least 2 weeks before a meet. So that's why we want to do it now and don't want to leave it last minute, because if you're not registered, we can't let you get on deck. And the competition coordinator does actually check it, and Swim Ontario with the meet manager also always has to verify it. So it is important that we do it, so please do so. And then on an ongoing basis, you do your deck evaluations and your deck experience. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is just a screenshot of what I just mentioned. So you've done it already for your swimmer, and then you should do it for yourself as well. So that is how it looks once you've done and signed all the forms. It will say 60% complete, invoice pending, and then the rest is done by our registrar, Katarina. And then next slide, this is how it looks when you log in. You basically have to sign the acknowledgement and assumption of risk form. You need to sign the COVID attestation, the Swim Ontario Code of Conduct, and then you're basically good to go. So it's not a lot, it just has to be done. And that's all there is to officiating. So yeah, main thing is get involved. Let's get some more parents trained up, because we are running very thin on level 3 and level 4 officials. Any questions?
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're just going to open the floor to you as parents if you have any questions about what we've covered today, whether it's for Richard, myself, or Ralph. Okay, so a question, apparel orders, there's no MMST swimsuits, jammers again. Will there be at any point again? The swimsuits and jammers are through a different supplier. And so Richard and Megan will have to decide whether or not we're gonna offer those again this year. So it's not part of the current apparel order, and we'll talk about it to see if we're gonna add those or make those available this year. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Scared everyone away.
Yeah. Hopefully your kids are getting back into the swing of things. I know it's taken Devin a little bit of time to remember how to swim. If you have any questions or concerns, and if you don't feel comfortable asking in front of the group, totally understand that. Please feel free to send myself an email, Richard an email, or if you have any questions about moving up the ladder and officiating, then you can email Ralph. Yeah, I'm so glad to be back too. Somebody just put that, or Brooke, you just put that into into the chat. So really appreciate everybody's time. Oh, when will this be posted on the site for others to view? Richard, how quickly can you get this posted? Can we get it up later today or by the end of the weekend? Oh,
Richard, you're on mute.
oh, Richard, you're on mute.
I know.
Hopefully, we'll get it posted hopefully by the end of the weekend, Monday at the latest. Okay. And we'll include the slides as well as hopefully the recorded version of this once we figure out the technology. Oh, and poor Richard's screen is frozen, so we'll get that sorted out. Yeah, I can't wait for the next swim meet. It'll be amazing to get these kids back competing. So thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.